So I hope you've heard of ABLE accounts. These are great savings accounts for disabled people. Today, we're going to be answering frequently asked questions about ABLE accounts and hopefully answering some of your questions as well. So just kind of a background of what ABLE accounts are. I'm going to answer the top W questions of, who, what, when, where, and how, right? But I do have a video where we dive deep into the basics of ABLE accounts, and I encourage you to watch that video because I think that's going to answer a lot of your specific questions. So what is an ABLE account? Well, as I mentioned, an ABLE account is a savings account for a disabled person who became disabled before age 26. Who can set up and fund an ABLE account? Well, the person who's disabled can set up an account for themselves, or somebody else can set up the account for the disabled person. And the fund, the ABLE account can be funded by themselves, the disabled person. Let's say they receive a small inheritance or they're working, they can put their own money in, or somebody else can make a gift to the disabled person's ABLE account. When can I set up an ABLE account? Right away. You should look into this. I think these are really great savings accounts. They're modeled after 529 plans, education savings accounts. In fact, they're called 529A plans, okay? So they do provide good tax benefits, and it's a great way to make gifts without using up your gift tax exemption. So let's say I'm a disabled person. Why would I want an ABLE account? Well, an ABLE account allows me to hold on to more than $2,000 and still receive SSI and Medi-Cal benefits. So it's a great way for a disabled person to be able to save up on different things, a way that they couldn't before this was passed. And then the how do we set up an ABLE account? Well, the one place you can go to set up an ABLE account is online. It's calable.ca.gov, and they'll walk you through the process of setting up an ABLE account, and they'll let you know what you need. Okay, so here's the top question that I've received about ABLE accounts. Here's what people ask me. Well, Ellen, my child is disabled, he can't work, but he's been denied public benefits. Social Security Administration says that he's not sufficiently disabled. Maybe he tried to work a couple months ago and they said, see, he can work, he just doesn't want to, right? So for some reason, he's not been qualified as disabled. Can he still get an ABLE account? I have great news for you. And typically the answer is yes, he can. So here's how you do it. You can get a doctor's letter stating that somebody is disabled and they became disabled before age 26. It's like a self-serving letter that you present to the disabled person's doctor. They sign and fill it out, and you keep it in your files. That's all you need. You don't need the doctor to talk to Social Security Administration. You don't need to submit this letter to them. You just need to have it in your files just in case you're audited. As long as that child has that letter, I'll have a sample of that letter for you. As long as the child has that letter, they can qualify for an ABLE account. Second question I get asked a lot, and this became very important starting January of 2023. So my child lives in California, but I understand that there are ABLE accounts all over the US. What ABLE account should I set up for my child? That's the question. One thing I should mention is that a child can only have one ABLE account. They don't get like an ABLE account in California and one in Oregon, and they don't get like 4 ABLE accounts in California. You can have unlimited number of special needs trusts, but only one ABLE account. All right, so you have to think carefully, where do you want to set that up? Well, first of all, I should mention that California has only had an ABLE account for the last 4 or 5 years. These accounts started in 2015, but it took California a little while to get their act together. So now there is a California-based ABLE program called the CalABLE account because, of course, we have to have a cutesy name for things here in California, all right? Now, do you want to sign up for that or not, right? Do you want to sign up for a different one? Well, the answer up until 2023 was, you could do either one. Doesn't really matter. Look at the fees. I mean, the fees were relatively comparable. So I'd say set it up in California. We do have a TrueLink card here now. It's a good place to do. Then some legislation just passed, some law just passed, which makes it very important for you to actually set up an account for a California resident here in California, a CalABLE account. And so let me explain why. Okay, so what does this law do? What used to happen, let me actually go further back than that. An ABLE account was set up so that Medi-Cal can bring a reimbursement claim against the remaining money upon the beneficiary's death. Kind of like a first-party special needs trust, if you're familiar with that. You get a reimbursement claim, and then anything remaining goes to the child's estate. Well, in California, we chose to waive the Medicaid reimbursement claim. So that was really nice. There's really only 3 or 4 states in the country that waive Medicaid reimbursement, all right? So that means it really does go to the next generation. However, if you are a California resident and you get an ABLE account in another state, Medi-Cal will bring a reimbursement claim against a stable account in Ohio, an ABLE account in another state, in Washington State. So what does that mean? That means from here on out, starting January 1st, 2023, you do not want to set up an ABLE account in another state if you're a California resident. You only want to use ABLE accounts, all right? Super important. Now, what if you already have an ABLE account set up in another state? Well, happily, that account will be grandfathered in. So this Medi-Cal reimbursement claim only applies to new ABLE accounts set up starting January 1st, 2023 and on for an ABLE account outside of California relating to a California resident. Okay, so new law, very important. Okay, the third question I get asked a lot is, how is money in an ABLE account invested? How is it managed? Well, TIAA-CREF, maybe you've heard of them, they are the platform for managing this money. And they have different tiers that you can choose. So you can choose, I want this to be invested more aggressively, I want it to be invested more conservatively, but an ABLE account only holds cash. So you can't transfer securities in, you can't transfer real property. For a special needs trust, you can transfer all those things in. So if you have a very specific type of asset and, let's say it's worth more than $16,000 or, 2023, $17,000, you should instead set up a special needs trust, whether it's a third party or first party, to transfer that asset in, okay? ABLE accounts, they really only hold cash. Okay, so another question I often get asked is, what happens to the ABLE money when the beneficiary dies? We already talked about that Medi-Cal reimbursement claim. That would not happen when you set up a CalABLE account. Okay, so there's money left. Where does it go? Well, unfortunately, the ABLE program has not set up a beneficiary designation form for their ABLE accounts. I think they should, but they haven't yet. And they haven't asked me, so, oh well, what can you do? All right, so instead, the money goes to the beneficiary's estate. Well, Ellen, you might ask, will that trigger probate? No, unless the money exceeds $184,500, which I believe is the current amount that you can have in your estate and still avoid probate. Okay, so if the ABLE account money is larger than that, then it could go through probate. But if it's smaller than the $184,500, then most likely it won't be going through probate. Instead, it would go to the heirs of that beneficiary, which would most likely be the parents, then, or if they have any kids, it would go to the kids, then the disabled person's parents, then goes out to their siblings, nieces and nephews. So there's this order that the probate code has of who would inherit it. I know we would much rather be able to direct where the money goes, but we don't have that ability right now. So for that reason, some people are keeping ABLE accounts, the money in that fairly low. It's really intended to be utilized and managed as opposed to be used for long-term savings that really builds up. So fifth question, speaking of utilizing and managing this money, how do we use the ABLE account money? Let's say I got it set up, yay, it's in there. How do I get it out of there? So the CalABLE account now has a Visa debit card associated with it. So the beneficiary or a third party can use that money to pay directly for things, and it comes out of the ABLE account funds. So that makes it very easy. It used to be, unfortunately, that you'd have to write a check and go through a lot of hoops, but now it's much easier to utilize the ABLE money. Okay, last question for now. Who can put money into the ABLE account? We know that there's restrictions on who can put money into a special needs trust. Is that the same for an ABLE account? Well, an ABLE account is much broader. It's much more permissive. So the beneficiary can put their own money into an ABLE account. A niece or nephew or other family member can put money in. I suppose you could do like a GoFundMe for somebody and put some of that money in. It can come from many, and And that has its own can of worms, so I'm not suggesting that. But what I'm saying is the money in an ABLE account can come from many different directions. But keep in mind, you can only put in up to the annual exclusion amount into the ABLE account, which in 2023 is $17,000. So I'm not saying that the beneficiary can put in $17,000 and then the niece can put in $17,000. No. Once it hits $17,000, it's capped off. Also keep in mind, once an ABLE account exceeds $100,000, if you're receiving SSI, supplemental security income, then SSI is suspended. So most people who have an ABLE account that I see, most people keep their asset level below $100,000. So I hope this video was very helpful to you. As I mentioned, we have a great video all about ABLE accounts, so I encourage you to watch that, and I'll see you over there.